The 21 Darkest Secrets and Scandals of Queen Elizabeth II. The world rarely unites in global mourning as it did this year in 2022 with the death of Queen Elizabeth II of England. The monarch died at the age of 96 after a reign that lasted more than 7 decades. The honours have been worldwide, and recognition of her role and dedication as part of the British royal family has been unanimous. Elizabeth dedicated her life to the United Kingdom, working on official acts literally until the last day of her life. However, behind the great monarch and the unifying image of the United Kingdom, there was also a hidden, sometimes dark side whose legacy is important to remember. In this video, we will provide an objective balance of the monarch's life, and we will tell you the secrets and scandals that shook her life, her reign, and her family. Before delving deeply, do not forget to subscribe to our channel and activate notifications to stay up to date with our updates. Number 1. She was not supposed to be queen. Although nowadays the image of Queen Elizabeth II is practically inseparable from the image of the United Kingdom, this was not actually the destiny that awaited her at birth. When she was born, she wasn't even in line for succession. However, her life and destiny changed drastically due to an external decision. King Edward VIII, her uncle, abruptly abdicated the throne to marry a commoner. This unexpected change left the crown to George VI, who was the ex-monarch's younger brother and Elizabeth's father. She was only 10 years old when the change occurred and had to start her training, accepting her new future as the eldest daughter of the new king, as she could not choose. Number 2. She was not a very attentive mother. Governing a country is not an easy task, but assuming a reign at the age of 25 can certainly be even worse. Elizabeth II ascended the throne much earlier than expected due to the early death of her father. Although formally, the monarch of the United Kingdom did not participate in the government, he or she is the head of state of all countries in the kingdom and a good part of the Commonwealth of Nations. This brings with it a series of responsibilities and tasks that, combined with a rather reserved character, made Elizabeth II a particularly absent mother in the lives of her children. The education and care of the 3 princes and the princess were almost always entrusted to servants, governesses, or boarding schools. Although the public image of the royal family always highlighted unity, in reality, the children did not spend even a complete hour per day with their parents. Number 3. She married her cousin. Perhaps at the time, it was not such a scandalous thing because it was a very common custom among European royal houses since the Middle Ages. However, Queen Elizabeth II was married to her own cousin, Prince Philip. The consort was actually the Queen's third cousin, and they had the same great-great-grandparents, Queen Victoria and King Albert, who were married and were first cousins. Number 4. She met him when she was just 13 years old. This situation would be very frowned upon in current times, but Queen Elizabeth II was just entering adolescence when she met and became infatuated with Prince Philip. The age difference was not small, especially considering the life stage of both. She was 13 and he was 18, a cadet in the British Navy. After they met, they communicated through letters for several years. When she turned 17, Elizabeth was sure she wanted to marry him. Number 5. Her choice of husband was criticized. While young Elizabeth was sure of her marital decision, her choice was not at all well received at the time. Philip was far from an acceptable candidate for a princess of the British throne, even though he came from a European royal family. By the time Elizabeth and Philip became engaged, he was in exile from his native Greece. His family had been expelled from the country, and he grew up in Paris. His mother was declared insane, his father aged with a life full of excesses in Monte Carlo, and his surviving sisters were married to leaders of the Nazi German regime. Marrying him was a personal decision by Elizabeth that could have put the security of the monarchy at risk. The British government did not trust Philip's loyalty and viewed his sister's ties to the Nazis with disapproval. Number 6. The crown affected their marriage. Although many thought that Prince Philip was seeking to climb the ranks with his marriage and even wanted to ascend to the throne, assuming the monarchy was not exactly pleasant for him. Elizabeth's coronation meant a drastic change in the family and couple's dynamics. They were still very young, she was 25 and he was 30. They did not spend much of their marriage outside of the crown. Elizabeth's becoming queen was the representation of all of the UK, and the entire kingdom was her responsibility and priority before her husband. He had to kneel before her after her coronation, which was not an easy gesture for a man of the 1950s. This led to several crises in the young marriage, and the prince was absent from home for weeks at a time. It was even rumored that he had several affairs, although no evidence of his alleged indiscretions was ever found. Number 7. It took Elizabeth a while to recognize Philip's equity in the relationship was impossible to achieve, as no one could be at the Queen's level. However, Elizabeth had the alternative of improving her husband's noble position, even if it was just a little, to reduce the symbolic gap between them. Philip was already royalty, Prince of Greece and Denmark, but one of the conditions for marrying the future queen was to assume British nationality. This meant renouncing his noble titles and becoming a simple English commoner using his original surname, Mountbatten. Eventually, he was given the title Duke of Edinburgh. It is not known for sure why the delay occurred, but it is rumoured that the lack of a better title affected Philip's pride, as he felt uncomfortable being respected only for his wife's position, and his children would have a better title than him. This is emphasized in a revealing scene in the Netflix series The Crown. Despite the fact that the Queen could improve his status, it took her 5 years to do so. It was not until 1957, 5 years after ascending the throne, that Elizabeth finally named him Prince of the United Kingdom. Number 8. She censored a documentary about her family. In 1969, the BBC produced a documentary inside Buckingham Palace, an idea of the Queen's press secretary, William Heseltine, who considered television an excellent way to bring the crown closer to the population and provide an insider's view of the royal family's workings. Titled Royal Family, the documentary showed life inside the palace, a rather ordinary portrait of the UK's principal family that was widely criticised. For many, the royal family was trying to appear normal, and its members seemed uncomfortable and unnatural in the video. The Queen was not pleased with the documentary because she felt it did not present them in a good light and that lifting the veil of mystery surrounding the monarchy was a disservice to their popularity. So, 13 years later, in 1972, she banned it from ever being broadcast again. At the beginning of 2021, after the great popularity of the Crown series, the documentary resurfaced on YouTube, but it was taken down again in less than 48 hours. Number 9. Her uncle had connections to the regime. While Queen Elizabeth II always maintained a strong repulsion towards the German National Socialist regime led by Adolf Hitler, connections with this totalitarianism in one way or another surrounded her life. Not only were her husband's sisters married to leaders of the Nazi Party, but there were also unacceptable sympathies within the royal family of a previous monarch. We are talking about King Edward VIII, Elizabeth's uncle, who abdicated the throne. Over time, it was discovered that Edward and his American wife, Wallis Simpson, were sympathizers of the Nazi regime. It is said that Simpson had a previous partner who was part of the German regime. Edward and Simpson even visited Adolf Hitler in October 1937, just 2 years before the start of World War II, when the Nazi regime had already begun its persecution of Jews and maintained an aggressive discourse against Western powers. Apparently, it is believed that Hitler wanted Edward to return to the throne, as a king sympathetic to his regime would undoubtedly be favorable in the imminent war. Number 10. She did not allow her sister to marry for love. While royalty implies many things, including privileges and wealth, it also demands sacrifices: private life, freedom of choice, and the possibility of living without ties. Elizabeth II dedicated her entire life to the crown and its duties, but she was able to choose her partner and marry for love, even facing the positions of the English government at the time. However, she did not allow several members of her family, mainly her sister Princess Margaret, the same possibility. As monarch, Elizabeth II had to grant permission to members of the royal family for their marriages, and in Margaret's case, she denied it. The love of the princess' life was an officer named Peter Thomson, who was divorced. The Church of England did not approve of divorces at that time, so the Queen, who was also the head of the Church, decided to prohibit the marriage, condemning Princess Margaret to a famously unhappy love life. Number 11. 3 of her children ended up in divorce. Despite attempts to maintain a perfect and proper image according to the precepts of the Church, the Queen's own children demonstrated that the perfect image was impossible to maintain. The 1990s were particularly hard for British royalty, as 3 out of 4 of the Queen's children had public divorces. Princess Anne divorced her husband after discovering an affair, which resulted in a child. Prince Andrew divorced his wife, Sarah Ferguson, after she was photographed having her toes sucked by an American tycoon. And of course, most notoriously, Prince Charles, the heir to the throne, had a very public divorce from his wife, Diana, Princess of Wales, whom he publicly cheated on for several years. These scandals highlighted the Queen's inability to handle family problems and exercise authority over her children's behavior. She was more than happy to leave it to her husband or her staff to deal with. Number 12. She allowed Prince Charles' affair despite his marriage. The tragedy of the marriage between Charles and Diana Spencer was a public and highly criticized affair. While Princess Diana was much loved by the public, Prince Charles had a well-known affair before his marriage with Camilla Parker Bowles. The romance did not end even when they were forced to separate to force the marriage with Diana. Camilla was also married at the time, and publicly, the princess had to tolerate the affair, which eventually became more evident, and the Queen knew it. Diana eventually revealed that she asked for support from Queen Elizabeth II, who, being so attached to tradition, was probably the only person in the world with enough power to demand respect for marriage and position from her son. But she chose to ignore it, allowing the extramarital affair to continue and leading to a very public divorce that severely affected the image of the British royal family. Number 13. In general, she had a bad relationship with Diana. Despite Diana being probably the most popular member of the British royal family, Queen Elizabeth never had a particularly positive relationship with the then princess. It is said that at the beginning of Charles and Diana's marriage, the princess asked for support from the Queen in a letter, explaining that she felt isolated and misunderstood by the family. Charles frequently abandoned her and she did not find her place in the palace. The Queen empathized with the princess at first, but eventually, a rift opened up between them. Diana was perceived as a rebel. At the wedding, she refused to promise to obey her husband. Her way of dressing was not always in line with the Queen's choices, and her charity work was not always well received. Additionally, her extreme popularity irritated the monarch. Diana's public statements, which showed the lack of support and affection from the Queen, worsened the relationship between the two, and then the divorce consolidated the separation. Unlike what she did with her sister, Queen Elizabeth II sent a letter to Diana in 1996 explaining that in conversation with the Archbishop of Canterbury, she had decided that the best option for Charles and Diana's marital problems was for them to divorce. Basically, the Queen chose to break up the marriage and simply notified Diana. After the divorce, although the Queen wanted to maintain Diana's Royal Highness title, Prince Charles insisted that it be taken away. The Queen, as she did with the affair, complied with the prince by making a public snub of the former princess. Number 14. The most tragic part of Diana's story came shortly after her divorce when she was enjoying a romance that seemed to make her happy. She died in a car accident caused by paparazzi in Paris. Diana's death was a great loss for the United Kingdom and the world. It became a global mourning event. Despite being Princess of Wales, The Queen ignored her death and did not send a public message on the topic until 5 days later. It is said that the Queen considered it a family tragedy that should be handled privately, but the public saw it as a gesture of contempt towards the princess. Finally, almost a week later, she gave a video speech in which she praised the princess' bravery and dedication to her children. But it was too late. No one believed in her supposed mourning for Diana. Number 15. Theoretically, the Queen is the head of the British state and has state duties but not government ones. She cannot and should not take sides in internal affairs, nor should she have public political sympathies. Although Elizabeth respected her role most of the time, she also abused it in secret on some occasions. The Queen investigated around 1,000 legislations before they were discussed in Parliament and vetoed some of them. This allowed, for example, the royal family to be exempt from laws that prevented racial and sexual discrimination. Until 1968, it was forbidden for migrants or foreigners of colour to work in Buckingham Palace offices, for example. Number 16. Queen Elizabeth refused to abdicate her throne. She was the monarch with the longest reign in history and refused to lose that position, although many say that this was due to her sense of duty to her country. The truth is that her reluctance to let her son ascend to the throne when he was younger was seen as an implicit rejection of Charles and his possible authority. In a way, the Queen has behaved as if she were the only one who matters. She has not planned the future very well and almost sees herself as the last sovereign. Everything has been about what suits her and what is good for the monarchy in the long run. One of Charles' workers once said, "Now that Charles III has assumed the throne at almost 80 years old, it ensures a much shorter reign than his mother's and many changes in the near future of the British royal family." Number 17. The distance between Prince Harry and his wife Meghan in recent years has been especially scandalous for the British royal family, mainly due to Prince Harry's decision to abandon his royal roles and move with his wife, American actress Meghan Markle, to the United States. The young couple claimed unfair and possibly racist treatment by the British press and revealed racism within the royal family. They claimed that they were not defended by the Queen, although Prince Harry did not directly accuse her. The truth is that her public attitude showed that there was no real support and protection. In fact, many have pointed out that Meghan is the new Diana of the British royal family. Number 18. Her tolerance of Prince Andrew's serious behaviour. Perhaps Queen Elizabeth II's most unacceptable behaviour has been her tolerance and protection of Prince Andrew, her third child and supposedly her favourite, even after being accused of child sexual abuse. Andrew always had wildlife and a libertine personality that the British press recognised, but it was his friendship with Jeffrey Epstein, accused of trafficking minors and inappropriate behaviour on a private island, that finally stained the reputation of Prince Andrew. He was directly accused of rape by a young woman, and although the case ended due to a financial settlement, it did little to help his guilt. The first accusations against Epstein came in 2011. The allegations against Andrew sounded in 2015. Epstein died in prison in 2019. And only in 2021, 10 years after the case began, was the prince officially sued by his victim. It was then that the royal household finally decided to remove his Royal Highness title and military connections. The Queen never publicly condemned the case. Number 19. The jewels of the colonies. The Crown Jewel collection includes the largest diamond found in history, the Cullinan, which weighed 3,106 carats before being divided into 9 different diamonds. The largest of them is in the center of the crown, used on special occasions such as coronations. Although the royal family says it was a gift from the British colony of Transvaal in 1907, located in present-day South Africa, community leaders in that country claim it was stolen by the Crown and have demanded that it be returned to their population. Number 20. The consequences of colonization. Although the Queen has been recognized for her role as head of state, this also implies holding her responsible for the consequences of British imperialism. While Elizabeth lived and represented the United Kingdom aptly before the world, it is important to remember that she did so without ever assuming responsibility for the abuses and atrocities suffered by its colonies and for the consequences that colonization left in many of those territories. Slavery, looting of riches, imposition of customs, and disrespect of different cultures are some of the biggest faults of the British Empire. And while Elizabeth had no real power or actual responsibility for her government's decisions, she worked to improve the British image in the world and did little to apologise for British responsibility for other countries' problems. Number 21. She left an uncertain future. Nobody knows who the real Queen Elizabeth II was, probably not even herself. Her decision to take on the role of monarch, her reserved character, her inability to choose, and her devoted duty fulfillment made Elizabeth II's personality a mystery. Thinking about the idea of monarchy in the 21st century seems insane, but the role played by the Queen is undeniable. Now that she has passed away, it seems impossible not to think whether the cult of her personality will now pave the way for a republic. After all, her legacy is so important that probably no one can replace her. Queen Elizabeth II of England undoubtedly had a historic role in the West during the 20th century and the current century. Her reign is the longest and will surely be remembered for her success, at least for the British side. But as with any historical figure, it is important to remember both her shadows and her achievements. Although she fulfilled the duty her position required, she did so at the cost of many things, including the emotional well-being of her family. If there is one thing that is clear, it is that Elizabeth II was an iconic figure whose legacy will continue to be remembered for many more years, even though no one really knew her deeply. We hope this video has been useful to you. If you have something to add, please share it with us in the comments section. Like this video and send the link to your family and best friends so they can also learn about the secrets and scandals of Queen Elizabeth II. If you are new to our channel, don't forget to subscribe.